I'm Kayla, the BookTube Turtle, and this is the next episode of my writing videos. So today I'm going to be talking about my drafting process. This is going to kind of be like an overview of each of the drafts I go through when I'm writing a book that I've experienced so far. I've only been through like 4 drafts of a book, so I'm going to talk about those first 4 and what each of those drafts means to me. So as always, this is what works best for me, and it might not work best for you, and that is okay. But do let me know in the comments if you all have different methods of drafting your books, because I love to hear what everybody else does. And also let me know if there's anything that I touch on in this video that you want more of an explanation to. I can either answer questions in the comments, or if it's a big enough topic, I could make a whole video about it. Okay, so we're going to start with the first draft, and this is probably going to be the longest one that I talk about. So, first of all, we need to talk about the truth about first drafts. It's going to be terrible. You are going to hate it so much. I mean, maybe while writing it, you're like, this is great. That's how when I write, I'm like, this is awesome. So while writing it, you're gonna be like, this is great. And then you're gonna get done, and you're just gonna be like, what is this? This is awful. This is terrible. What even is this writing? And that is okay. That is normal. And that's just how it is. The important thing for first drafts is getting the story out of your head and onto paper. And there's this quote that I really like that's something like, you can't edit a blank page. And that's so true, because you're not going to get anywhere if you don't at least write something. And even if it's bad and it's a mess, you can always go back and fix it later. Like, there's always going to be more drafts. You're not going to get your book published on this first draft. You're going to have to go through multiple drafts before you get anywhere. But you can't start to improve anything if you don't have anything to work with. And personally, I feel like the first draft has the least amount of pressure, because like when I write a first draft, I tell myself that it can be as bad as it wants to be because no one is ever going to see it. You know, no one has to see your first draft if you don't want them to. That is for you to get the story down, and then you can fix it later before you show anybody. Because at this point in time, no one has ever seen my first drafts of a book, ever. Nobody needs to see the first draft of my book. It's bad. I don't even want to see it now that I'm on like draft 4. I don't want to see that first draft because I know it's bad and I can't even look at it. But even if you finish the draft and you think that it is the worst thing that has ever been written, just like think about how awesome it is that you finished the draft at all. Like, you wrote a book, and you know, not everyone can say that. And it's important to remember that you can always fix it later. So no matter how bad it is at the beginning, it's gonna improve as you make more drafts. Also, word counts, don't worry about them in the first draft. I mean, I did set like a target, like I wanted to be at this word count, but it was lower than what I wanted the book to eventually be at, because I knew I wasn't going to hit that word count the first run through. So there are 2 kind of types of writers. There's underwriters and overwriters, which is basically what that sounds like. I'm an underwriter. My first draft is like, there's just never enough to it, and it's kind of like the bare bones of the story, and then with each draft I extend it and I flesh it out more, and there's more to it. Whereas overwriters write too much, and then they have to like condense it down as they go through drafts and kind of figure out what they need and what they don't need. So then we have the second draft. For me personally, this is the draft that takes the shortest amount of time. Because I'm an underwriter, I use this draft as a way to get a completed story. So even after the first draft, I don't feel like the story that's there is finished yet. And once I'm all the way through it, you know, I understand the story better and the characters better, so I can begin to add things and fill in some of those gaps in the second draft. Also, I tend to leave blanks in the first draft where it'll just be brackets and it says insert whatever scene here, because I'll get to that part and I won't know how to write it or how it's supposed to fit in with everything else. So then I'll go back and add that scene in to the second draft. For second drafts, I usually will rewrite scenes that are like really cliche or overly dramatic, because there's just some scenes that come out like that in the first draft, but you just keep on writing and you don't worry about it at the moment. And usually after the second draft, I feel like I have a more fully rounded story. Obviously, I'm still going to add things and take things away and restructure stuff in all of the other drafts, but I feel like my baseline for the story is there. So then there's the third draft, which is when things get more complicated, at least for me. This is when I start getting more specific in the things that I'm fixing. I focus more on how important certain scenes are to the story. Like, should I take them out? Should they be expanded on? Should I add in a scene that's going to help this flow better? Stuff like that. And I really worked on character development and like making sure stuff flowed the way I wanted it to. There was a lot of major changes and like restructuring of things, even though honestly I feel like draft 4 has had a lot more going on. Personally, I feel like this is a good stage for critique partnering. If you don't know, this is when you swap manuscripts with another writer and you like edit each other's books, which it really depends on what you do with each draft. Like if you spend longer per draft or a shorter amount of times per draft, you know, this could change depending on if you feel like you're ready. But I did critique partnering in the third draft of my book, and it was really helpful to be able to talk to somebody about the changes I wanted to make and have certain things pointed out to me that like I knew wasn't working, but I wasn't sure why it wasn't working. So that helped me be able to go into draft 4. So the fourth draft is the longest so far. I'm currently on month 5 of this draft, and I know it's still going to take longer. I'm probably looking at like 6 or 7 months, because I was thinking earlier today, I was like, this is probably going to be done in February, and then I realized there was this giant chunk of chapters that I just like forgot about, and I was like, that whole thing has to happen, that's important, I can't believe I deleted that from my mind, but that's going to take time, so probably looking more at 7 months, but we'll see. So in this draft, I've been working on making some of the changes that my critique partner suggested. Not all of them though, which I think is important to note. When you do critique partnering or beta reading, you don't have to take everything they say into account. You know your story best, so you have to decide for yourself what things to change and what to stay the way it was. Like for me, there were some things that my critique partner pointed out that I couldn't mess with because it connected to something in a later book. And I mean, she didn't realize that at the time. And then there was other things that just I wasn't comfortable changing because I knew that it would change overall elements of the story that I didn't want to change. So, but then there were other things that I did change that were really, really helpful. I've also really been focusing on making sure the story flows as a whole. So I have had to add in a couple like short filler chapters here and there to kind of connect some of the bigger plot points and make things smoother. Also, description has been a huge thing for me in this draft. I've really been adding in like small details and describing things better, I feel like, and just putting more into it that makes it feel more real, I guess. And I've just been really going through my book a lot slower this time and paying attention to the smaller things. Once you're going through this book so many times, it just gets to the point where you're like, I've been through this before, this is so predictable, and I just hate everything, because I have those moments quite often in this fourth draft. Okay, finally, I want to point out that every draft, I completely rewrite the book. I rewrite it word for word every time. I mean, that doesn't mean that it changes every time, because I'll have like split screen, so it's like, this is the draft I'm working on, here is the previous draft. And so there are some, you know, sentences, paragraphs, whatever, that are exactly word for word the same since the very first draft. But I feel like if I start copying and pasting things, I'm gonna miss something important that needed to be fixed. And also, I feel like if I retype it, my actual sentences get better sometimes. Like in the first draft, that was not quality writing for most of that. And I feel like with each draft, it's like slowly gotten better. And I feel like making myself rewrite that makes me spend more time on the actual wording of each sentence. And so it's gotten better over time. Whereas when you're writing the first draft, you know, it doesn't matter what anything sounds like. You just write it out. So like I say in all of these videos, it's really just about finding what works for you. Also, don't worry about how long it takes per draft. Take as much time as you need. You know, some drafts are going to take longer than others, and it's just really about what you need and what your goals are for that draft. Yeah, so the next episode will be about starting your book, things like the opening scene and the first chapter and everything that comes with that. So that's gonna be it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!